Joined now by our good friend Karate Hoosier. How are you, sir?
I could not be better, and I mean that in the most literal sense. I could not be better. We are NCAA game day, man. It's been a long time since we got to wake up to this day, so I'm glad it's here.
Yeah, the trappings, even though it's in Dayton, are here. You see the signs up. The road begins here, as it does for the teams that are here, playing their way into the regular portion of the tournament. If Indiana wins tonight, their reward is to head west, young man, and go to Portland, where you've spent some time, I just learned, back in your younger days. And while it's a beautiful city and a nice place, it's certainly not some place I want to go to after playing and getting done with a basketball game at 11 o'clock and probably jumping on a charter in about an hour after that.
Yeah, it's a really, really tough pull for everybody involved. And it's, we talk about the players. You can certainly make an argument that the NCAA is maybe lacking on its duty to look out for student-athlete well-being. Understand tournaments can have a lot of compressed games or a compressed schedule for a lot of games to get squeezed into. But it's borderline ridiculous to go from Dayton and then have a 48-hour turnaround 3 time zones away in the most consequential game of the season. But it is what it is. The committee didn't do Indiana any favors. But at the end of the day, the committee called Indiana's name. And when this season started, you, me, everybody I spoke with basically said, the goal for this team is make the NCAA tournament. Pretty cut and dry. That's what they need to do. And we're here.
And after losing to Syracuse, losing the 22-point lead at Wisconsin, Kevin, you almost say, all right, well, you had numerous opportunities, and while that run at the end was great, you still had a lot of opportunities that you gave up. So we're going to put you here, but you are in, like Ronick said, and you have a chance to do what you. Once again, their destiny is in their own hands.
Yeah, and you take a look at body of work, but I think to Cronick's point with regards to that, I'm just curious, like, why couldn't they have, set something up where they went to Milwaukee or they went to Pittsburgh, where you're much closer from a geographic standpoint in terms of a turnaround. I mean, that's like a short charter flight or a bus trip even.
And I don't understand.
Why the West Coast? What?
They originally, Indiana was supposed to play Notre Dame. They were the last 2 in. But Indiana already played Notre Dame during the regular season, and they already played Rutgers. So they were given Wyoming instead, and it changed everything. This is the lower-seeded game. It's just a bunch of stuff that the NCAA does that nobody at the end of the day understands. And I'm not sure that they understand, Ronick.
Go ahead.
I was going to say that the Rutgers, that game has to go to San Diego too. They have to go to the West Coast also. That's just my point. Like, why not send them to Pittsburgh? Why not send them to Milwaukee, where it would be at least a little bit easier from a logistics and a travel perspective? And they can do rematches. They're allowed to do them, but I think they try to avoid them at all costs. But you could have had an Indiana Notre Dame rematch in Dayton, and I think it would have been fine.
Chronic, you think that also with the Big Ten getting 9 bids, 3 more than anyone else, that they're saying, all right, you're getting these extra teams in, well, we're not going to make it easy on them at all.
No, I think it almost feels like there was some punitive element to the decisions involved. We can sit here and I can probably piss and moan for a couple hours on the subject. End of the day, Indiana's non-conference wasn't great. They lost a lot of winnable games throughout the course of the season. We're not having this conversation. Probably if they just beat Syracuse or they don't drop that game at Penn State or, the Wisconsin lead, or we can go on and on and on. Woody decided to sit, almost half of his available scholarship guys at Northwestern. That was a choice they made. At the end of the day, the one that I think really sticks out to me, though, you don't feel like they weighted the conference tournament that much. They absolutely gave no deference whatsoever to Rob and Trey's injury. And that's something that we have in years past seen the committee at least seemingly account for. And that's nowhere to be seen in the decisions they made in Indiana. But, I take the other side of the coin and say, Indiana probably had no business being in this tournament 5 days ago. Not probably to it. They had zero business. They had to go up in Indiana or Indianapolis and play their way in. End of the day, though, like I was saying earlier, this is the tournament. If they continue to win basketball games, they will have a chance to win the national or play for a national championship. And at the start of the season, all throughout the season, that has been the base expectation for this program. And against a lot of odds, they found a way to make it happen. And I'm certainly not going to put any large wager on them winning the national title, although I'm obligated to have at least one bracket that I do out. I maybe not submit it, but I at least got to ride it out where they make it there. But against all odds, they're here, and they're playing some pretty decent basketball right now. And it can go sideways in a hurry with this team, with any team in a single elimination tournament. But that's the beauty of March, and the beauty of today is we get to watch the Indiana Hoosiers take part in this glorious tradition that we've enjoyed for so long.
I'll ask you both this question. You mentioned the Northwestern game, one of those that was just easy that let it get away. But I see that as the turning point for this team. If that doesn't happen, I don't know that they galvanize, because that's what I've seen them do here in the last 6 games is galvanize. Xavier Johnson's play. I don't know, if the conversation that was had after that benefited, but there has been a marked difference since that game, since those suspensions. This team has come together, Kevin. I don't know that they're playing as well now if that doesn't happen.
Well, let's not forget, at the end of the regular season, they did lose a lot of those games. I mean, they were close. Ohio State, Rutgers, there were some heartbreakers there along the way. I think it definitely had an impact on Xavier Johnson, and it raised his play for sure. But they still – that was still part of the tailspin. I mean, 7-9, and then they regrouped in the Big Ten tournament. I think – I look at that comeback in the second half of Michigan as being like the season saver. The energy they played with and how they really came together and played with a sense of desperation.
I mean, that tied the 17-point deficit they faced in 2002 against number 1 defending champion Duke at the Eastern Regional in Lexington, where they were down by 17. But this was in the first half, I think. In this Michigan game, this was a 17-point deficit in the second half, which unbelievable. It was like 13 minutes ago.
Yeah.
That's just unbelievable.
24 run.
That's an unbelievable comeback.
No, it's probably one of the most improbable games I've ever seen this team, and probably more so simply because of what we had seen in the 5 preceding weeks. A team that was very, very competitive throughout most of the stretch, but always found a way to fold when it came down to winning time. And I agree with Kevin. I think this was a resolve that came through in that huddle, where they just refused to lose. They refused to let the slide continue. They refused to be left out of the Big Ten tournament and ultimately of the NCAA tournament. And it's a great thing to see a ball club playing some of their best ball in tournament time. And that's pretty much the best you could hope for now. Could we ask for a better shooting percentage? Absolutely. We can sit here and nitpick for days, but at the end of the day, the Indiana Hoosiers are playing some of the best basketball that they've played all year, right when it matters most. Now, can they sustain that? Can they put a run together here? Obviously, that remains to be seen. But I'll tell you what, it is 180 degrees opposite mood from where I expected it would be on the first day of NCAA tournament games. If you'd asked me this question just a week ago, I don't think most people outside that locker room realistically thought this team had a shot of putting themselves in this position. I said it. You had to say it last week on the show or anytime you talked about it. There were still games to be played. They are not mathematically eliminated yet. And come to find out, they weren't quite ready to be eliminated themselves. So here we are. Now we'll see if they can hold that. This is going to be I don't think Wyoming is a team that anybody can overlook. They are really similar to Indiana in as much as they don't rely real heavily on the 3-point shot. They're going to work you inside out, and they're going to break you down. And Indiana, as we've seen throughout most of the year, Trace is going to have to show up. Obviously, guards are going to have to be available. Xavier's got to find a way to keep himself on the floor, and they can't hit lower than their season averages when it comes to shooting, particularly 3-point and free throw shooting. They just can't. This is not the time to take a dip. And I think if they can do that, they're going to be in a position to win. And I think if they can continue to do that, I actually like their path to the Sweet 16. I think the team we saw in Indianapolis is a team that is very much capable of making it to the second weekend. But there's a whole lot of stuff that's going to have to come together in order for that to actualize.
Steve Prather had a comment here that reminds me is about officiating. And you always see when you go from conference play to NCAA tournament play, a lot of times those games are officiated differently. If you play in the Big Ten, you're used to the same group of officials who call it one way. Well, now you're getting officials from different leagues that may call it differently. The Big Ten is known as a banging league, very physical. Sometimes you get out, and if you draw the wrong officials, that could be not conducive for your game.
Yeah, Big Ten definitely a body bag league, but it's always interesting when you do that mishmash. You know what I mean? I wonder if we'll see Bo Borowski here or not. But we'll you just don't know. Yeah, you have to adjust. That's part of the adjustment process. But I think it goes for both teams. It just doesn't go for Indiana. It goes for Wyoming as well. And we know Xavier Johnson is the kind of guy that sometimes can pick up fouls. He plays very aggressive. He's probably going to play aggressive against Maldonado. So we'll see. Generally, in my experience in covering NCAA tournament games, though, they usually, more often than not, let a lot of contact go.
Yeah, and this is I think this is a situation that could be good for Xavier, could be good for some of the guards. Bigs are going to bang. Trace is used to that. I think the only thing that concerns me about that is you've got teams that they get really used to getting a good percentage of their buckets from the free throw line, and if the refs are going to hold on to the whistles a little tighter, you got to hit your shots because they're not going to give you free opportunities at the stripe if you can't convert from the floor. So, Indiana shooting, I believe, about a third of their points or their free throw rate. It's about 33%. You can't rely on those whistles. You've got to finish through contact. And more than anything, you've just got to adjust to the way the game is being called. And that's really difficult because you can whiplash. But, coming out of the Big Ten, just act like you came out of halftime and expect a totally different game from the officials, and you'll be just fine.
Yeah, I'm wondering what the crowd is going to be like tonight, Chronic. This is, Kevin mentioned earlier, an excellent opportunity for Indiana fans, especially those along the east side and southeast side of the state. Dayton, such an easy place to get to, an opportunity to see them play that maybe they wouldn't normally get. Last night, I think we saw quite a few fans that probably don't normally get that opportunity. Josh mentioned he came over to watch the shoot around. But there were some definitely Indiana fans there last night. Not many from Wyoming. This should be a very, very, very pro Indiana crowd.
Yeah, it should be about the opposite of what you would expect on a road game in the first four. I think it's going to be a de facto home game for the Hoosiers. Like you mentioned, probably not going to see a whole lot of Cowboys fans out and about outside of family. But you know what? That can come back and bite you too. In tournament play, there's some teams that are born to play the role of spoiler. And it's what a better stage to do it on than the NCAA tournament in front of a gym 90% full of your opponent's fans. So I think Indiana needs to capitalize on that energy. As we've seen throughout the year, they played a different level when they were at Assembly Hall. Obviously, sight lines are going to be a little bit different, but it should feel a lot like home for them. Just 2 hours and 45 minutes up the road from Assembly Hall.
but this is the time of year we've all been waiting for, and the excitement that builds around these games. It's amazing the excitement level when it's an NCAA tournament game, even whether it's a fan or however. There's just that extra level of electricity that just comes with it automatically. You don't even have to ask for it. It's just there.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. I've already had 3 people offer me tickets today, just today, this morning, who, like myself, when the show was on, you've got the ticket site pulled up, just waiting to see where we're going to be. And I think a lot of folks, when they saw it was it was a short hop over, pulled the trigger real quick, perhaps before they had maybe secured commitments from their traveling parties. But it's a great opportunity for Indiana fans to see, a lot of Indiana fans to see one more game in person before they make the swing out west. But I would expect there to be a pretty good IU contingency in Portland. As we were saying earlier before we came on, I spent some time out there for grad school. Know a lot of Bloomington kids that work their way out in the Pacific Northwest there. So it should be a good Hoosier contingency in the Rose City if we're lucky enough to make it out there.
Kevin, we've talked about the disadvantages that Indiana has been given, while also the advantages. This game right here of being able to play with so many of their fans able to come over. So Indiana should have a decided advantage on that front tonight.
Yeah, and the fact that it was less travel demands too than Wyoming, I think will be pretty interesting. Wyoming, it'll be pretty interesting to see if Josh Allen maybe makes a trip, right? The Buffalo Bills quarterback, Wyoming alum, or maybe we'll spot Fennis Dembo in there, the 2002 former Wyoming standout. Larry Nance Jr., another one. So
Joby Wright, former coach at Wyoming from Indiana. So it's a few connections there to Indiana. But Wyoming's a great place, but not known for their basketball. I can't say that.
Known for their rodeo, probably, right?
There you go. What's up next for you, my friend?
I am probably going to drink a lot of whiskey tonight.
The J-Mo will be flowing.
I was looking at the schedule, and I have very early morning obligations back in Bloomington tomorrow. I did not expect to have a Tuesday night game when I was filling my calendar out, months ago. So I'm going to stick to home. We're going to watch this one on the couch from the friendly confines, and then it's going to be a tough one to get some sleep, win or lose. These late games are absolutely brutal, but I'm not going to be that guy bitching about it, because at the end of the day, you could put this thing on at 2 a.m. and I'm going to be bright-eyed, bushy-tailed with Fish on the radio, and we're going to cheer for some Hoosiers in the NCAA. We've let go a couple of coaches since we were last here, and at the end of the day, the argument was they weren't consistently putting a team on the floor capable of getting to this point. And for Mike Woodson to be able to get the team back in the dance in the first year, I think it's absolutely a boon to the program's momentum underneath this new staff. For the players that are going to be returning, I think it's imperative. I still have no idea what the roster is going to look like going into next season, but I know it's probably going to have a fuller participation with Indiana having made the dance this year and hopefully able to get a couple of wins under its belt in the NCAA tournament. And that's everything. Yeah, every team in this tournament is going to lose except for one. That's just inevitable. That's the way these things are set up. Recognizing that reality, but also recognizing how much momentum they're going to be able to carry into the off season, into the recruiting cycle, having had a chance to get themselves in position to play in this tournament, I think is absolutely massive for this program. So happy for the staff. I'm so happy for all the players and their families, for that matter. There's been a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that have been shed since the last time Indiana played here, and you love to see the payoff. You love to see these guys get rewarded for their hard work. And who knows, man? Let's see if we can put a run together. We're playing some good basketball. So I'm watching the clock. I am biting at the bit to get to 9-10 tonight.